I already gave you guys a full tutorial on how I personally make my manga and comic pages myself. But now, how do you get from this to this? And before you ask, obviously, first and foremost, a book is a book. Doesn't matter if you want to make a novel, comic, art book, or whatever. It all basically works the same. And I'm here to tell you how it works. Hi guys, my name is Marcel and I have made a lot of books by now. Manga, art books, sketchbooks, tutorial books on how to draw, and some even becoming bestsellers. I've made over 10 books by now, and I'm even working on the next one right as we speak. Some of them are self-published, and some of them I've made together with a publisher. So I do have plenty of experience in both. And today I'll give you some infos on what the pros and cons are for self-publishing and going with a publisher. What you should definitely not skip, like your portfolio for your publisher, and all of the other infos. Just a little spoiler, both options have good and bad sides, so definitely tackle this with an open mind. After all, I also did both and there's a reason for that. That being said, this video is split in 3 parts. One being a roadmap on how to publish your book with a publisher. There's also a roadmap on how to publish your books yourself, and there's also a little part where I talk about my experience and what I would personally suggest. Oh, and before we start, I would really appreciate a like on this video. That way I know that you guys enjoy this, and maybe I'll make more content regarding making your own manga or comic very soon. Alright, if you want to read all about my stuff that I have published so far, just visit my website. And now let's publish your book. Like a sir. Alright, let's do the publisher route first. Publishers are, for example, companies like Viz, Black Horse Comic, Tokyo Pop, etc. for all of you American viewers. Depending on your country, you obviously gotta check which publishers are big in your country or your area. And most publishers have more information on their website about how you can submit your own original ideas for comics, mangas, or novels. And it doesn't matter where you apply, most publishers would obviously like to hear everything about your story that you have in mind. That mostly includes the actual story, your characters, their designs, etc. AKA a portfolio. So basically, the better your portfolio, the better your chances are to get a positive response from the publisher. So you want to make a portfolio that looks as professional as possible. There are tools for making professional portfolios. The one that I'm using right here is called MilaNote. They actually sponsor today's video, but I also use them for my personal projects for years now. I have a link to this tool down below. You can use MilaNote with no time limit and for free if you use my link to sign up. And also, you're supporting me by clicking the link. So making a portfolio for your story and characters is super easy since there are over 100 templates to choose from. You just gotta replace the text and the images with your own stuff. Let's take character designs for example. I guess that's something most of you guys really need for your applications. So you could easily use a character design template where you can just replace the photos with your own drawings. There's a simple export to PDF or PNG image and boom, professional portfolio right there. And I think we can all agree that this looks pretty damn professional, especially compared to your box standard Word document with a bit of text. I do not think I need to tell you why a good portfolio makes all the difference. And it's not only for portfolio, MilaNote is a tool for organizing your creative projects in general. So I'm using this tool to collect ideas like outfits for characters, locations for scenes that I want to draw for my manga, etc. I also told you about this last time, but I've animated a commercial for a fashion brand, and it's also super helpful to have tools like these in order to have all of your references ready and organized. Also, obviously, my client was very pleased when seeing this, so he knew that his project was in good hands. Actual animation studios also use tools like these in order to organize their biggest projects. And yeah, there are some built-in tutorials that explain all of this, but I think it's all pretty self-explanatory since most of these features are simple drag and drop. You can even copy and paste things that you find online. That's also super helpful. And like I said, it's all free and without a time limit with my link down below. Thanks to MilaNote for sponsoring and to you guys for sitting through this ad. Okay, now you did create a portfolio with whatever they listed as required on their website, and after you sent them your portfolio, well, there are only 2 responses you could get. Either they give you a good or a bad response. Well, I mean, there is actually a third response that you could get that's not so uncommon, and that's a yes, but maybe. So they looked at your portfolio, your characters, your story, and they really like it, but they might have to change a couple of things. Maybe that one ability of that one character is a bit problematic and needs to be changed or cut completely. It doesn't only have to be copyright, believe me, I've had all kinds of weird reasons that my publisher wanted me to change things. I have an example, and that's really just an example, and it's not an advertising attempt, but when drawing the cover for my new book, I didn't even color it at first, because there's always something that needs changing. And yeah, my publisher actually rejected that one and requested a couple of more covers. A lot more covers, until I finally came up with something that they were fine with. So yeah, prepare for a lot of discussions and debating if you get a but maybe as a response. And that's why you usually don't already draw your entire manga or work in beforehand, because they maybe have a couple of changes, and believe me, they will have changes. Okay, let's say you discussed this thoroughly, you swallowed your pride and agreed to cooperate and change your story, your characters, or the name of your not so vaguely referenced superpower. So next up, your publisher would send you a contract. Now, important, this is not an employment contract that you are going to get here. You are not an employee, so on one hand, this means that you don't have to quit your job if you wanted to do this on the side, and I'm also pretty sure this also means that you don't have to be 18 in order to sign. But on the other hand, if you want to do this full time, you are now self-employed, and I really urge you to do some research on what that means for the area that you live in. Paying your own health insurance really sucks, at least here it does. But if that's not an employment contract, what does this contract say anyway? Well, obviously it says how much money you get for your work, and also how much money you get in royalties. Also, there's obviously going to be a deadline when you need to be done with everything, and most importantly, your sole rights, the rights to your series. Be it manga, comic, or novel, whatever you were submitting, you have to sign off the rights for that. But yeah, it's basically selling your soul, because this means that your publisher is now allowed to decide basically everything for you if they really want it. They decide how much volumes your series will get. I know that your story is planned for 10 volumes, but it really doesn't sell well, sorry, so you gotta end it next volume. They can do everything with it, so they could even change the name of your work if they really think that this would sell better. Oh, you think that's a joke, huh? You think that doesn't ever happen, huh? Okay, now, here's my original German book called Zeichnen like a Sir. Just literally drawing like a Sir in German. Now, here's the English version, Draw Like a Mangaka, which still makes sense, grammatically fine, it's like very obviously the same book, correct? Now here's the French version, called Manga Shonen. Still the very same book, but the title just sounds like, hello there, fellow kids. You like your mangas and your shonens, right? I did not consent to this. That's also why I self-published the manga series that I have drawn, because I did not want any publisher to touch a manga series that I have worked on for 6 years. This is my baby, the baby that I have drawn, and one of my best friends has provided a story for. So I do not want any publisher to rename it to Mythosia or whatever. Or to Manga Shonen. From the point on that you have sold your soul, I mean your story, the publisher and specifically your editor also have a say in your story, depending on the contract. This means it often happens that things are cut or changed because it's too long for the story or it wouldn't sell well. You can often see this in Japanese interviews where the storyboard is marked with red and rejected, and unfortunately that's not only happening in Asian countries. That's why I specifically decided to publish a simple tutorial book with a publisher, because there's no story to change here. There's not much that would be changed. Okay, besides that. So yeah, your publisher takes care of everything, and this, of course, also has its bright side. Like, you basically don't need to know anything when it comes to actually printing stuff and all of the technical stuff, because your publisher takes care of all of that. You also don't have to pay for your manga to be printed, because your publisher takes care of everything. You also don't have to worry about where to store all of these books, because your publisher takes care of everything. You also don't have to go through the trouble hassle of opening an online store and stuff, because your publisher takes care of selling it via Amazon and bookstores. And yes, you also don't have to speak any other languages, because if it's successful, your publisher is going to translate your title into other languages. Like Manga Shonen. Just be aware that this may take some time. My first tutorial book was published in 2022, and the English version, well, it's not even out yet in English. 2 years is a long time, and mind you, the initial book was a bestseller right at launch, so with less successful books, this could take even longer, if at all. So yeah, be excited for my next book when it releases in English in 2026 or so. Here's a really positive example though. Radiant is a French manga that is even available in Japan. The French mangaka obviously doesn't speak any Japanese, but the publisher took care of everything, translating it and selling it in Japan. And many great artists there, like Yusuke Murata, became a fan of the manga, pushed it, and even made fan art of it. So it really exploded in popularity there. It has become so popular, it even got an anime adaptation. Without the publisher translating and selling it to Japan, this might not have happened at all. And yes, there's also the issue that publishers usually don't pay very well. What I found here was a German video of a woman that has published way more books than I did, but she's still not able to live off of that. So all in all, if you should or should not publish your work with a publisher is pretty much depending on your contract and your conditions. And there is only one way to find out: making a portfolio and sending it to a publisher. It doesn't cost anything, so you might as well just give it a shot. You could always refuse the contract if you don't like the condition. Okay, but what's the alternative? What could you do instead of working with a publisher? Well, you could always just do it yourself. Okay, now that was the publisher route. Let's also go for the other route, aka how to publish a manga, comic or novel on your own. Self-publishing is both much easier and much harder at the same time. First of all, with the publishers, you only need your ideas like character designs, etc. to be ready. With this route, you can start after you have your manga, comic or novel completely done and have the finished files already. And don't worry, like I said at the beginning of the video, I already made a tutorial on how I finalized and scanned all of my manga pages. So if you're still confused about that, give this video a shot. Okay, so you have everything ready. Your manga, comic or whatever is done and you have all of the files. Now you need to turn them into a book. For this you go to the following website: www.google.com, and you search for book printing online, and then you'll find tons of websites where this is possible. I've been making books and manga for almost 10 years now, so I can say I've tried most of these well-known sites, and I can confidently claim they're mostly the same. It doesn't make much of a difference which printing on demand service you choose. I've had really terrible and really great experiences with all of these sites, but thankfully these sites have reviews where you can read if they are actually good or not. I hope we can all agree that the step of Googling should be very easy, because if you're already struggling here, the next couple of minutes would be kind of rough. It's called self-employment for a reason, and for some things you just have to do your own research. If there are any technical questions like which format do my files need to be, can I submit a JPEG, does it need to be a PDF, these are all things that you are asking the company that you're ordering your books at. Every company has different requirements, so I obviously can't answer this question. Now, if you have spent the money and printed your books, theoretically you are now self-published already because you managed to print your own books. Congratulations! But yeah, self-publishing obviously also means selling these physical books. And about how you sell these books, there are several ways to do this. For example, you could create your own online shop where you offer these books. I did this entirely by myself, renting a server, setting up the website myself, etc. But there are also websites where you can easily make your own website or online shop for a monthly fee. Then there are third-party sellers like Amazon. You can sell through them. I would not recommend it though, because Amazon has insanely high fees. I actually did that with the first volume of my manga. I went through the trouble of ordering an ISBN, because that's what you need in order to sell on Amazon. You don't need this if you want to just sell on your own website, only for Amazon. But the costs here are so high, I didn't even bother buying ISBNs for the other 5 volumes. So yeah, do not recommend. There are also things like Instagram shops or TikTok shops, which I don't have much experiences with, but people do use them to sell their stuff, so this could also be an option. And then there's another method that I want to mention, and that's selling at a convention with your own booth. I go to conventions multiple times a year with my crew in order to give people a chance to meet us in person and also buy all of these books at my booth. And if you're not that into the comic or manga scene, you might underestimate just how common this method is. Just look up the Japanese convention called Comic Cat. Calling this a big deal is the understatement of the decade. A more Western example would be the New York Comic Con, which also has a big artist alley. A convention that I attend annually would be Dokumi Expo here in Europe, also massive. From experience, I can say that this is by far the easiest way to sell something on your own without having to make a website and all of that other stuff. How exactly you can exhibit there, well, you can read on the homepage of the respective convention. The only catch here is the bigger the convention, the more your work gets overshadowed. Many people make the mistake of going straight to the biggest conventions. I wouldn't recommend that for starters. Maybe pick something smaller at first if you have never done this before. And maybe now you understand what I meant when I said that your publisher is usually taking care of all of this. If you sign with a publisher, your publisher is the one selling your books and making sure they appear on Amazon and even in bookstores locally, which, by the way, you have basically no way of arranging yourself if you self-publish. Your work here is making the actual book and then be done. With self-publishing, well, I would actually say drawing and making the actual book is the fun part and literally only half the battle. Arranging stuff with shipping services, registering a business, hiring an accountant for your businesses and taxes and your online shop artists and so on. I obviously can't make tutorials about all of these topics, so like I said, if you want to be a freelancer like that, you just have to have the most important skill, which is being able to do research. Because, whoo, boy, do you need to do a lot of research in order to figure all of that out. But that way you get to decide everything on your own. You want to make a version in another language? Well, go ahead and translate it by yourself. Print some more copies and now you have some copies in another language. Making an English version of my manga series didn't take me 2 years. I did this in a month or so. You want a hardcover instead of a soft cover for your book? Well, then you print them yourself. Nobody's stopping you. With the publisher, you have no saying in this at all, no matter how much you want it. They get to decide. So yeah, this is a decision that's up to you. I can not help you with that. But what I can do is to give you a couple of tips. Okay, like I said, I've done both, selling my work to a publisher and also printing and publishing everything myself. And I can safely say, whatever route you take, you probably won't have much success at first. And the chances that a publisher is actually gonna respond and take interest in your work is very slim. I would not be surprised if most publishers don't even take their time to answer. And with self-publishing, well, you can spend a lot of money and print a couple of books, but who's gonna buy them? I came across this great video by Jason K. Parjan, which I thought was common knowledge, but most people didn't really know about it.
Like pinned to the top, I've got a video where I basically run down the plot of the upcoming book. It has 500,000 views, and I've probably sold 250 copies off that video.
So, in case you don't post videos with your occasional 1 or 2 million views, you are really not gonna be able to sell your work. I've made my very first book, the first volume of Myth, almost 10 years ago. I didn't print 1,000 copies back then, or 100. I've made and sold like 20 copies. And I was pretty happy with that. It was just a hobby to me. I didn't care about making money and stuff. I didn't want to make this my job. Having made a manga was just something on my bucket list that I wanted to tick off. Back then, it was not a genius plan to make Germany's biggest indie manga. That just happened. I received so many DMs being like, I just printed my own comic, but no one's buying it. What can I do? And the most realistic answer would be to curb your expectations. Maybe you thought that 1 million views on your video means 500,000 copies sold, when yet, in reality, well, you heard the guy.
My channel has generated around 500 million views of my video. To really make a dent, those are the kind of numbers we're talking about.
But why would you need to sell at all? Are you making manga or comics because you want to make money and be famous? Or are you drawing because it's actually fun? Are you also just started uploading everything for free on the internet at the beginning? The reason I printed physical copies was because people have been asking for a physical copy, not because I thought making 20 copies would make me rich. So instead of dealing with contracts and publishers, or dealing with printing and selling stuff online, what's stopping you from just doing it for fun? There are so many ways of just uploading your work online, like Webtoon or Tapas. And if your story gets bigger or blows up, well, that's the point where you might think about selling it, and you could start thinking about making money. And don't get me wrong, this is not something that you have to do. It's just something that I would do if I were to start over again. Just doing it for fun, like back when I started. Not having to worry about anything. And if people online want to order a physical copy, well, then you could still go ahead and think about going to a publisher or making the books yourself. That's what I believe is the path that has the least disappointments. Full stop. Also buy my books!